This conference will now be recorded.
All right, welcome to the future of real estate. I'm excited about this. Kirsten,
Wonderful, me too.
you do you even know what I'm talking about yet? You don't. I haven't shared it with you.
Oh,
I
yeah. Surprise,
leading
surprise.
leading up to this, I just said, Kirsten, hold on. I'm working on something. So I want to talk about being judgy, being judgmental,
Yeah.
and
Judgment.
how that relates to real estate. Um, it's about property valuation.
So this is
Like
good judgmentalness, right?
I
This
don't
is
know. I
good.
don't know. We'll talk about the good and the bad. And
Okay.
I think it's good judgmental. One of my favorite things to say is because we always hear, "Oh, stop judging me, don't judge me." And I think one of the best things that you can say to yourself is there's a point at which not judging becomes bad judgment. I mean, we have to make judgments every single day as we're going through life because there are good, bad, right, wrong, whatever, and it has to gravity doesn't stop just because you didn't judge. And
Exactly.
so in real estate, how does that apply to making the decisions that are best for you and seeing past some of the, now my stager friends are going to go nuts on me, maybe get some comments on it, uh, the the fluff of staging and how it covers up and deceives you from the things that really matter as a homeowner.
So what do we call that? We call that lipstick on the
On a
pig.
pig.
Yeah.
Are
Not
you
so
ready?
glamorous.
So the way this came up is I this is what I do every day, but I specifically was working with two properties that were very close together and working with a buyer, going back and forth. Which house am I going to consider? And they had made a comment of on one house they walked in and they fell in love with it, and they fell in love with it because it just had charm, and yet it had nice staging and pretty colors and all this nice stuff. And by the way, I like the house, but it was more expensive than another house that had what's called an ADU, which is an accessory dwelling unit, which is like an exterior office, and a pool. And that was a plus to them. Some people don't want a pool, but in this case, same size lot, it had a pool, ADU, had been repainted, and all kinds of work done to the property. And yet, at that property, which was still going through some of its renovations, there were a handful, and I'll say a page full of minor issues that still needed to be fixed. And I'm going to show you this, and I want to walk you through what an investor might look at, and someone who is renovating, looking for a flip property, what they would look at and how they would make these decisions, because the value of real estate, the real win in real estate, is not looking at the fluff and the staging and being, I'll say, deceived by letting your mind deceive you, but to really look at what the costs are or what the long term value is of the property that you're purchasing. And more than anything, as an investor myself, it comes down to what is the cost of making many of these repairs or fixing them long term, like in 10 years. What does it look like? Now, Kirsten, I know you were trying to get me off the phone last time I was talking about this. It's like, are you done? Are you done yet? Are you done yet? But Darryl, I was like, okay, what I run into, what did I say about the state of real estate agent training in the current market?
Yeah. So unfortunately, unless you are significant veteran in the industry, you may or may not know what to look for and help your customer as they're making these evaluations, these critical evaluations, right? Which is what we were talking about. Is that what we're seeing in the market is that maybe some of the agents just aren't savvy about the long-term return on investment or even short-time term return on investment, and may not be guiding their clients in the right direction. That's really the best direction. It may not be the most visually appealing direction, but it might be the best direction.
And here's what makes me really sad as a realtor is we go through the walkthrough on closing, right before closing, and a buyer doesn't see, and this can often be when they're choosing the house, and I can say anything I want. It's not my job to force my opinion on someone else. It's my job to share and consult, and then let that individual make the decision that's best for them. But
Right.
it's very painful to watch someone buy something that I know is going to be a higher maintenance problem for them, or when they go to sell it in 5 or 10 years, that we're going to have to address issues that weren't addressed when they purchased it. Now, that by itself is not bad. It's when they chose that house over another house that didn't have the same issues, that was very comparable. And in choosing one house over another, it's what they convince themselves on, which is exactly what you said. One is prettier than the other one. Pretty is fleeting. You want the substance. I mean, it's like choosing your mate. You not just the one that has that looks the prettiest on Friday, but the one that has the long-term um, relationship value, and that's what we've got when we're going to houses.
Right. Yeah. But here, let's talk about this for a second, and this might derail you.
I've got pictures.
Right. Is that um, we're all very visual,
Mhm.
right? So there is a responsibility of a home seller, right, to put that home in the best light, right? Whether
Yeah.
it's staging or doing those touch-ups, doing those minor things to really mitigate the risk of having a good qualified buyer walk out not purchasing that home because in their mind they start writing these stories or telling stories, right? And you're no longer providing that narrative. They're making up their own mind.
Yes. And I was thinking of something. Buyers see what they see, not what it can be. Well, guess who makes the most money on real estate? Uh, the person who makes the most money on real estate is the one that has that vision. That's why investors, flippers, go in, they can fix some stuff up, and they turn around, they sell it for a premium. So
Mhm.
let's take a look. You ready to look at some pictures and
Oh, sure.
really discuss this? I think
I can't wait. I can't
it's going to
wait.
be very, very exciting. So here we go. Um, let's um, let's look here at, I'm going to skip this one. This was a lot of rotten wood was removed. I tell you what, can you see that? Can you see that well?
Yeah, I can.
So a lot of rotten wood was removed, and a buyer. I showed this to a buyer specifically before the house went on the market, and they were really concerned about this strip here against the building that wasn't painted, and where a piece of wood was removed right here that had rotten, which a stonemason just comes in and takes care of, easily fixed, but it's an eyesore. Um, Here, an
Well, and
example.
it's more than an eyesore, Daryl. So as a consumer, um, when you see that, you automatically start thinking, what else? What else? What else? And it, like I say, it takes you down this narrative where you don't want that buyer to go, right?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. And looking here, when you see what is behind the,
hmm
look at how ugly that is.
hmm
And yet, every house that you look at has that behind it. If it's an older home, it's what has been put on top of it. And in this case, going on with some
Oh, the
hardy,
siding. So what we're looking at this is we're re-siding that. Okay,
correct, a hardy
got
plank
it.
cement board that won't do what we're looking at here later. So again, we're talking about the vision um, of making this stuff, transforming the way something is, but you have to be able to see what it's going to become. Nice clean lines here, but look, there are two things, actually three things: two old light fixtures, which were now replaced, but at the time not, and a missing grate on the return vent. The missing grate taken down. These are good things. Now think about this. The missing grate taken down because the painter removed it to paint instead of painting over it. Now, many home buyers will look at something, they'll see the grate there. They don't pay attention to the fact that it has a nasty coat of paint on it, because when you paint metal with regular latex paint, it never really looks the same unless it's been sprayed on.
Right.
But you take it down, it looks really ugly. Doesn't that look ugly right now? And yet putting it back on, now it's going to be clean, ready to go. And talking about this, it's such a silly discussion sometimes. It seems so trivial, and yet it's what buyers get fixated on when they're looking at a house. Nice clean lines on the exterior, on fresh paint. What an ugly floor vent, floor register. How do you fix that? It's $10 at Lowe's, a trip to Lowe's and $10.
So yeah, let's talk about that for a second.
Go ahead.
When you go to sell a home, some of the very best advice that doesn't cost a lot of money, but you get a huge return is one, new vent covers, light fixture fixture plates, right? Getting all the plates the same color, modernized. Just those little changes like that, doorknobs, etc., make all the difference in the world.
So if you're a home seller, get those things done. If you're a home buyer, let these things really add up what they actually are. It's an afternoon and a couple of trips to the hardware store and a few $100s. And what you're getting in return from that is brand new. So this looks uglier, but you're getting brand new. Mirrors not hung. What is this? This is brand new mirrors. They're just not hung yet. Yet a buyer would look at this and think, oh my goodness, look at all the renovations that have to be done. And yet it's brand new mirrors. Another
But
house.
so just a second, Darryl.
Go ahead.
But in a situation like this, if you're the listing agent, one of the things that you would do is you would be documenting this, right? That this obviously you're going to hang the mirrors, right?
Yes.
We're not going to sell the house without the mirrors being hung. So communication is key about what is left, if anything, in a renovation.
I agree. And look at that ugly fan up at the top. But an electrician in an afternoon can put in all new fans. So again, going through the renovation process, and I bring these to light because real comments from buyers who found it difficult to process the information. But think about it, all of this will be new in this specific property. And yet, here's the competing property that actually got rave reviews. Now hear me, rave reviews from home buyers going back and forth. And here's what was there, but they were distracted, mentally distracted, visually distracted from the flaws in the property because it had pretty. It had pretty colors, it had some pretty furniture, had some pretty carpet, and yet this is a door frame. So this, you see the painted molding there? When you really stop and analyze something, you see that is not a nice, fresh, sprayed coat of paint. It's lumpy, and the lines aren't clean, and yet buyers don't notice that. So what I'm saying is, and help me with this, Kirsten, because this is critical. This is where the difference is made in making that quality purchase and buying something that's lipstick on a pig that you're going to have to redo anyway. If you're going to have to
Right.
redo it anyway, buy the ugliest that you can, not something that's pretty that you're paying full market value for. Look at this.
Right.
This house had new paint, and this is a painted door that had a coat of paint on it, but see how you can see through this. It needed a second coat of paint. And you can see through the top, it's splotchy. And the bottom, there was a second coat of paint put right here around the door. You can see it's kind of dirty around the handle, but from a distance, it looks great. It's the kind of stuff you notice after you move in.
Well, and let's talk about that, right?
Right.
So, having a trained eye, every person, right, it can go through a home. It doesn't matter who you are, whether you're a real estate professional or not, and go through that home and create a checklist, right? Which is what I always do. Is I start in one room and I just sweep the house and I just start voice to texting. These are all the things I observe. And then we're going to talk about this a little bit later in the conversation is we're going to categorize what we've seen. And that really is how we can make a data driven decision and start to, even put it into an Excel spreadsheet, and work with, your
But
agent.
now you're in my world, because I mean you are the data person, and that's one type of personality. This what I'm calling out here is what type of personality are you? Viewing this, are you that uh, bottom line person? I don't want all the details. I just want to make this decision quickly.
Yeah.
Um, are you the engineer type that you want all the data? I'm the bottom line person, and I'm going to walk in and I'm going to look for these things specifically very quickly because I only want to get to the data. And home buyers and sellers, when they're doing it on the other side, but home buyers are making a choice um, of which house do I want to invest my time in to consider for a purchase, or which houses, what are my top three. And buyers will look at so many houses, they lose track of these things because they're not really looking at this kind of stuff when they walk in. They're just getting this overall, oh, this is pretty and this is the one I
Or
like.
how do I move my furniture in, right? So something that we often hear when we're working with buyers is, well, what would you do with that room, right? So when they walk in, it's almost like there are stages, right, to seeing a home. First is, can I
There
see
you go.
myself here? Second, how would I live here? And then three, what is it going to take to live here, right? And which is what we're talking about.
That's exactly where I was headed with this next is how do you go through those phases? So you walk in, very quickly determine, is this something that fits your personality or lifestyle? That can be pretty quick. And then you move to, let's take a really close look at how this house was cared for during its ownership by the current owner.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's really old looking, but it has been meticulously maintained. That means that behind the paint is going to be something that was well cared for. And then you go into the inspection items. You can inspect the heating and air. You can inspect the roof. All of those things are generally would fall under a mechanical. Something that consumes a utility would also be that. And those things are easy to quantify and repair, and they can be written in a contract. This stuff that's in between, how a house was maintained, is not something that is, it doesn't show up on an inspection. And this is where things are mostly missed, is you can't tell someone, oh, replace all the baseboards, because there's nothing defective about them. It's just been sloppily painted over the years, and it's been made a mess. Same with the doors and stuff here. So here, look at some of this detail. So you get close. This is a really
Oh,
great
it's
looking bathroom,
molding. Okay. Yep.
but you get close, and this is what it looks like when the camera's close to it. But I'll tell you, home buyers that walk in, 90+% of them will not see this until they move in, and then that's what they purchased. Back to this, the cabinets look great, except they're dirty and they need to be repainted again. But from a distance, you can't tell that. This is so common. This isn't about just one house. This is so common as a 30+ year veteran of selling houses. I'm making this video to save myself time in the future of having to describe all of these things that I need my buyers to understand when we go in. Because when you call me back to sell the house that I've sold you, you want me to put it on the market? If you've taken good care of it, I want you to be a winner in the market. And this is how we do it. Because subconsciously, more and more people will begin to pick up on this, and you're not going to have to clean up the mess later. Peeled wallpaper, the bottom. Now look at the thickness of these windows. The windows look okay, but energy efficiency and cost of ownership over the years will begin to add up, because this is an early model of thermal windows. Newer ones have silver coating on them, and they're thicker. And you can also see from a distance the inside the window frame look good. You pull the curtains back and see what's really back there. And this gets to old siding. So you take the weatherability of this siding. This is under a porch, fortunately, so it's not showing as much weather. But what is exposed to the weather starts to absorb underneath. If it's not painted carefully, it starts to absorb underneath on these overlaps, and that's where you get the buckling, the swelling of the siding, and it eventually has to be replaced. A lot of the newer sidings will not buckle like that. So back to here. This was something that I thought was an interesting standout. A buyer thinking this house had just been painted. Buyer thinking, oh, all this terrible stuff. The ceiling, the candle lights are falling out of the ceiling. Actually, candle lights fit up in the ceiling. So my point here is ask questions. Don't make assumptions. So all of these candle lights in this particular house were literally pulled away from the ceiling because the painter pulled them away from the ceiling so that they were properly taped off and painted around rather than painted with a brush and you get splotchy lines around the ceiling, the light fixture itself. So what looked actually worse was much better than it would have been otherwise. Interpret that for me, Kirsten, because I'm the one
So
that gets
yeah,
down
so
rabbit trails.
it's a minor adjustment. It's a minor adjustment, but the reality in all the things that you're pointing out, right? As a good real estate professional, if you are a buyer agent, you're going to walk through with them and you're going to have that conversation with them. If you're listing that house, you may just take the extra time to make sure that doesn't happen, so then you don't have to go back and forth with people, having these different, thoughts. But the reality is that's a very simple fix. It's adjusting a hinge, right? um, yeah.
So, and I guess my whole point here, the reason I wanted to have this discussion with you is to kind of expose what should be expected from your buyer representative when they are walking through a house and helping you see and evaluate and pull these things back, look at them, talk about what it means to repair different things. And if you're working with a realtor, well, be careful to choose a realtor who has experience in a multitude of repairs. And that doesn't mean, we've got to be cautious about this. That doesn't mean that you need to look to your realtor as the final expert on everything, but they need to have in their phone, they need to have the person they can call, the
Right.
contractor they can send a picture to and say, hey, what do you think of this? Because this is, when you're buying a house, you are buying either a well-maintained home that is a machine of sorts that you're going to live in with your family for many years and you enjoy, or you're buying a maintenance nightmare. And truthfully, most homeowners have not been through the process of making as many repairs as a flipper or an investor would. So you need to be able to rely on your advisor, your real estate agent, to help you compare and contrast. And every price point is going to be different. What you're going to be looking at $150,000 versus $500,000 may be a world of difference. Obviously, you can have a $500,000 home or $1 million home that's just big, but has a whole lot of deferred maintenance. But it's mostly common when you get into the 100, 125-ish range. You're at the very bottom of the market, and those homes need, they're smaller and they need a complete renovation. But how does your realtor advise you based on the relative nature of the market and the market data?
And your
That's what you need
personality
to be looking
and
at. Does that,
your personality type and tolerance level and resources, right?
yeah, and what you're talking about here is a single person, a single mom versus uh, a roofer, somebody who's in the roofing business and they just do all this kind of work
Or
a lot.
handyman, right?
Um, Somebody who's got a handicap and physically can't get around to fix things. There are times that you want to pay a premium for something. And there's also the stage you are in life. So I'm giving you permission as a home buyer to pay a premium because maybe you're like me. I'm 54 years old. There are certain things I don't want to do because I don't have to do it anymore. And I'll just pay a little extra because it's taken care of and I don't have to mess with it. But there are other things that I know I can order or take care of because I have the resources to do it. And I don't want to pay for someone else to fix it, pardon the expression, half-assed, and leave me with a mess that I've paid for, but I have to redo again. And too often, that is the process that people find themselves in, and that's where you lose money in real estate. So the win is in that long-term vision of what can this property be, and what resources do you have to put into it based on where you are in your life. I think that's the best summary of all the discussion that we've
Mhm.
just had. Wrap that
Yeah.
up, Kirsten.
All right. Well, make wise choices, right? That fit your lifestyle, your tolerance levels, and make sure that when you're walking through that home, right, you are scrutinizing it because it's an investment, but then also make sure that you are educated or you are working with someone who's highly educated on, how much is it going to cost to fix that? Is that something? Is it cosmetic? Is it structural? Um,
Nothing's
and
going
is
to
it
be,
a
yeah, nothing is going to be perfect. Nothing.
right?
So you want to find the one that has the best risk for you.
Yep.
Um, Listen, you can always find more baskinrealestatespecialist.com. And if
Oh,
you're not getting the
Daryl,
Baskin report,
there you go. Sorry.
okay. a lot of this stuff, a lot of this stuff, we put a summary articles in the Baskin report and QR code links to get to this information. Listen, we want to be your real estate agent for life, and that's why we do this, is to educate you, because we believe educated consumers make better decisions and are loyal to us. That's where our clientele comes from. So choose the right realtor who is there looking after you for long-term, lifetime relationship. And I can virtually guarantee you that you will be making good real estate decisions that are suiting your lifestyle and enhancing what you're enjoying with your family. So, hey, the Baskin Real Estate Specialist, baskinrealestatespecialist.com. Kirsten, thank you always for your good input.
Thanks, Daryl. Have a great day.